You're good.
Okay. I'd like to call the April 26, 2022 special call city council meeting for the city of Lake City. If everyone would stand for the pledge of allegiance, remain standing for the invocation. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for your guidance and these deliberations, that what we do is for the betterment of our community and pleasing in your eyes. We ask that you look after our first responders, our troops, and our citizens. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Ms. Sykes, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hill.
Here.
Jefferson.
Here.
Mr. Sampson.
Here.
Mayor Witt.
Here.
Mr. Dial.
Here.
Trevor Line.
Here.
Keith Butler.
Here. Ladies and gentlemen, Lake City Council has opened its public meeting since 1968. The city code has prohibited any person from making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becoming boisterous while addressing the city council. Yelling or making audible comments from the audience constitutes boisterous conduct. Such conduct will not be tolerated. There's only one approved manner of addressing the council, that is to be recognized and speak from the podium. As a reminder, persons are not to openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed weapon or firearm while the governing body is meeting. We need a motion to approve the agenda as published.
So moved, Mayor. Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda as published. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Public comments, Mr. Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Council. Glenn L. Bowden, 1156 Northeast Basco Norris Drive. Mr. Mayor, I want to use this public comment session to speak about the item that's on the agenda, but a little more general. I want to speak to the specifics of my concerns when it comes up. But I think, Mr. Mayor, the council and this community need to understand how we get where we are today. We're in this position looking for a city manager today and feeling like we're up against the wall, not because of the citizens. The citizens didn't make this decision. It's because of the decision that the city council made over the past several months. It was the city council who decided to get rid of Mr. Haffenberger, though I agree with his dismissal. But the council made that decision, and the city council have taken this long to hire someone, not the citizens. And so to give the impression that, well, we got to do something now because we ain't got this dire need, that is true. But it's a need that was created by this council, not by the citizens of this community. And I don't know if it's true or not, Mr. Mayor, but when you read the newspaper, it's talking about $160,000. My view is this: if the $160,000 had been on the table at the beginning of the process, there's a good possibility that this city would have attracted a different caliber county had they known the salary was $160,000. I had a young man that texted me that lives in Orlando, not just retired from the military, or E9, got a master's degree, he's in the contracting. And first thing he said to me, had I known it was $160,000, I would have put my name into the hat. So I said that to say this, that if that's going to be the offer, the only fair thing to do was to go back out and let it be known to the people who are seeking the city manager position that that's the kind of salary you're offering, because there's probably some people out there that didn't apply for the job just because of the salary that we know. We talking about 120 to 130,000 at the beginning, went up to 140. But now we seem to be talking about 160. So at re-advertising for $160,000, there's no telling what type of candidate you may get. And not doing so, I think, is kind of doing a disservice to the community as a whole. Also, Mayor, that at the beginning of this conversation, I remember every member of the city council had one thing in common. We want someone with experience. We want somebody with the experience. And you always talking about experience in the city manager field, in the county manager field, even assistant city manager. You weren't talking about experience in the Navy or in the Air Force, in the Army. You was talking about city manager type of experience. And now, all of a sudden, that experience is not an issue. It don't matter if the person only had a year and 9 months. And, we just want somebody. So, Mr. Mayor, I would encourage on tonight that during your deliberation, you consider everything about this decision and not just do it because you feel an urgency to do it. We've been without a city manager now for 9 months. We started out with Ms. Field, went to Mr. Williams, and Mr. Dial. And I would suggest to you that while it may not have been a lot of things happening at the top, but the city, as Mr. Dyer said, the city's been running smoothly. If the fire department worked, police department worked, public works worked, the gas department worked, so the business of the city is moving along. So to feel the need that we got to do that tonight, I think it's unfair to the people who may be interested in working for the city of Lake City for $160,000.
Well, you said you wanted to speak again before we took any action, but that's the only item on our thing, so.
Okay, well, you can start them over now, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Sack. Let me talk a little bit about the candidate that's being considered, Mr. Mayor. I've had the privilege to be to every city council meeting where there's been a discussion about the city manager, hiring of a city manager. From every workshop, everything you've done, I've been sitting out here in this hall. And my point that I want to make is that a person got a year and 9 months worth of city manager experience. It's one thing, I don't think that's good experience. But also that year and 9 months is in a city where 0.4% of the population happen to be of color. Now that don't make Mr. Adams a bad person, but it does suggest to me that he don't have any experience at the city manager level dealing with a diverse community. So I think it would be a mistake to bring somebody in with that level of experience to become the city manager for the city of Lake City, given the position that we find ourselves in now. I also believe, Mayor, that any consideration for a interim city manager for 6 months, that's almost accepting the fact that we're gonna be without a permanent city manager for a year and a half or longer. And I can't see the benefit in someone coming in with a contract for 6 months with the interim and generate the kind of respect and leadership that he or she would need to conduct the business, because it'll be the same view. He's the interim city manager. I mean, if the person not the city manager can make serious decisions, then he's gonna be viewed as an interim city manager. And I think it would be unfair to the employees to bring a person in as an interim city manager with the idea that, well, we just gonna see how he work out in 6 months. Well, we can do that with a city manager. So I would recommend to the city council that we not proceed with offering a contract to Mr. Adams, because number one, I don't think he got the experience. And secondly, Mayor, since we interviewed, not we, but when you interviewed Mr. Adams, he have applied for jobs in other cities. And I think it's not a negative, but I think it's something to be concerned about. How is it that he has applied for jobs in other communities and been considered? But here we are months later, and this gentleman still had not been able to land a job. So what is it about him that caused other citizens to say, well, I'm gonna consider you, but he don't get the job? So I think that should be a consideration also when you start thinking about it. Why is it that he done made the final 2, the final 4 in other communities, but he didn't get the job? I would suggest to you it's the lack of experience is the thing that keep people from making that decision. I would urge you all to consider that also. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Warren?
Mr. Mayor, Council Sylvester Warren. I don't want to be redundant, Mayor. I don't understand how we got to this point. I see that at least 2 or 3 people had agreed to call this special meeting. I thought this was behind us. I thought that the council had agreed to move on to interview people. I thought we were at a point that if we're going to offer an additional amount of salary, that we were going to give everybody a fair opportunity to have a bite at that apple at the new salary, with the idea that it may attract new potential candidates for city manager, people that may be more qualified, people that have more experience. I'm very disappointed, Mayor, and the council that we would even entertain a guy that was very arrogant toward us, told us that we didn't even have enough money to hire him, that he did not even want to come to Lake City, find himself months later still unemployed. And I echo the same concerns or the same consideration that Mr. Bowden made about it's the lack of experience. You get your CDL license, you try to work for an established company, 2-year minimum over the road experience you gotta have. What we have not done from the diocese is set a parameter as to exactly what we're looking for. We should have said, hey, look, we want somebody to have at least 2 to 5 year worth of city manager experience on their resume. This is the salary that we're offering. The leadership went about doing it wrong, but it still doesn't mean that we can't fix it, Mayor. It still doesn't mean that we can't fix the council. But I can promise you with the problems that Lake City is experiencing, not as far as the departments and the directors, because I think that Mr. Dow and other interns have done a great job of running those particular services. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about as far as the future of Lake City, dealing with the county. You got, those guys are very established, they're very experienced over there. We lack an experienced team. And if we get a rookie at the table, remember, this is his first time in his whole life ever being a city manager. So the year and 8, 9, 10 months he was there, he was on the job training. He still is not a city manager. He was learning how to become a city manager. And so we do not want to put Lake City in the hands of an infant as a city manager. And it's time that we say, hey, look, yeah, we're not in the best position. We're going to take what we got. Mr. Dowley's agreed to stay on. We're going to keep pumping this thing through, and we're going to figure out as a team, as a city, and as a community, how we can get somebody with the right amount of experience before we find ourselves in another Heffenberg situation, having to get rid of somebody prematurely because they didn't work out, because we did not be a little bit more patient, advertise a little bit more, and do a little bit more to get the best candidate, not for certain people, but for the whole city and the whole community and the future of this town. And that is something that all of us that sit up there on the diocese have to think about. When you make a decision, you're not making decisions for yourself, you're making a decision what is best for this whole community based on the amount of experience that the city manager can bring and take the city to the next level. And I will submit that I don't think a person with a year and 10 months can take us to the next level. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right, the only item we have on the agenda is city manager position.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, I put my name on the sign-up sheet back here.
I didn't say, okay, if you want to come speak. I didn't get that one.
My name is Jerry Leskowitz. I live at 787 Southeast Evergreen Drive here in the city. And I never thought I'd come up to this podium following the 2 gentlemen that preceded me to say that I agree with them. I think they both are right in the issues that they have raised. The only thing I would add to it is Mr. Adams left his position, or was he asked to leave his position? What were the circumstances of that particular incident? And I think we need to find that out before you come to a final decision on moving forward with anything. The second thing I'm here to talk about is this city council. Back in the 1960s, there was a famous cartoon in the newspapers every day called Pogo. One of Pogo's very infamous comments, almost like Winston Churchill's, was that we have identified the enemy and he is us. And believe it or not, you are the problem this city is facing, all 3 of you who are here now. Perhaps the best counselor that we had left in September because he couldn't put up with what's going on, and now you can see what has been going on. In my opinion, the 3 of you do not possess the competence, the aptitude, or the capability to perform your duties, and you don't belong where you're sitting right now. And my recommendation is that once a decision is made to select a new city manager, I recommend all 3 of you resign and commit to not rerunning for office again. And that the city, perhaps under the mayor's leadership, go out and find some interim temporary city commissioners to handle the thing on the cycle of the election process and move forward. We haven't had a city council member since last September. I came up here and spoke about that before. 2 of you afterwards said, well, you come to us and we'll help you out with anything. Aside from that, I don't get the feeling, and so do a lot of other people that live around my area, that you would give a damn. You don't care that we don't have a council member for that district. You're only interested in your own personal power and your own gain and what you can do to achieve something. Why hasn't something been done? Why is that woman that applied for this position and assumed that she had been selected, Why has she been pushed into a corner and shoved out into the court someplace, never to be seen again? Something's wrong here, and it's wrong with this council. Thank you.
Okay. All right, item one, the discussion city manager position. Everybody got the email from Renee. Mr. Adams is not asking at this time to be permanent, he's asking to be the interim for 6 months at the salary of $70,000 and a housing allowance. Anybody got any comments?
You say he's not asking to be permanent?
Well, he's saying that he might work into permanent, but right now he's asking just to be the interim with the possibility of being permanent, is the way I read it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm not interested in another interim. I'm interested in a full-time manager. That's what we need. My feeling is if we go the route of an interim, but then that is exactly what it says, the interim. We need, at some point, it's gonna have to move from the interim to the permanent. I'd rather do this thing the right way and do it for once. We need to select a permanent city manager. And I know that it's been a long time, but I would like to do it the correct way. What I think is the correct way, and the way that I think is the correct way is to select a permanent city manager and be done with it. That is my personal take on it.
All right.
Well, I agree with Mr. Jefferson. First of all, we already have an interim city manager, and he's doing the job for way less than what this guy's asking. Again, if we're gonna offer this job, we need somebody that's want to come in permanent, not as an interim, and not for $160,000 with little to no experience at all. That's just my opinion.
I think it is time for a full-time city manager. I think Mr. Adams talked to Ms. Narlock. I think her email said she talked to everybody. I think that email went to everybody. And Mr. Adams offered that 6 months to show that he could do the job and that he was worth the 160. I think that shows a lot of commitment to say you're willing to come with no guarantee that you will be here longer than 6 months for a reduced amount to show that you can deserve that contract. So to me, I would like to see him get a chance. I understand what Mr. Jefferson's saying as well. Mr. Hill, it'd be great to have a full-time person, but this search from the beginning has not gone that direction. I've not seen any other candidate besides Mr. Adams to this point that's even considerable. So, and from talking to Ms. Narlock in the last week, I don't know if I believe she said she talked to everybody. There's no other candidates at any amount. So if we're not gonna move forward this way, then we need to start the search over with a different headhunter altogether. So, I mean, so she hasn't delivered and she's been over this how long? And we're yet to have anybody? I mean, I think we give Mr. Adams a shot and see if the 6 months can turn into a full-time. And I mean, he's got a lot of confidence. I don't know what the worst that could happen is if at the end of 6 months we don't hire him and we end up with in the same place we're in now. But the rate we're going, if we start over, it'll probably take us that long to hire somebody anyways.
I agree.
Well, the other candidates had confidence also, and they wasn't asking $160,000. And we had candidates that was well qualified, but like I said before, the skin color was wrong. And there's some people sitting out here tonight don't like what I'm saying, but I don't care. But it's the truth.
Well,
This is why this council, as y'all say, is a laughing stock to entertain somebody with less than 2 years' experience this kind of money.
Now, Mr. Adams does have experience with $1 billion budget.
Right.
with 6,000 employees. I think that qualifies. I mean, by every means of the charter, he'd be one of the most experienced people we've hired.
Exactly.
And that wasn't just military employees, that was military and civilians. I mean, and that was in a civilian position. White Sands, New Mexico, if you look at the size of that, it was 4,000 square miles, Lake City's 12. I mean, it's not comparable. I mean, they ran a nuclear plant, we don't even do that. So he had experience in everything from every type of utility to every type of management of a position, of a department. So to say, because there's one job, the last job was 1 year and 9 months, I think. But what about the other history? But then we'll take 6 months history from someone else and say, this person's perfectly qualified, but look at them 20 years before it. Or the guy that changes jobs every 10 months.
But again, if he's got this so much of a background, why hadn't he got a landed a job yet?
Well, I think, you know, he's not asking 160, he's asking 70. And then if he doesn't work out, you know, it's up to him and us to, you know, prove it. So I think it's worth,
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we offer Mr. Adams the position of interim city manager to include the following: a 6-month city manager contract, annualizing the amount of $140, employment to begin on Monday, May 2nd, housing expense up to $1,500 to be paid for or reimbursed by the city for the 6 months, and a provision for 1 30-day extension agreed to by the first day of the 5th month by both parties in writing.
okay, there's a motion, is there a second?
What was that motion again?
That we would offer Mr. Adams a 6-month interim manager position in an annualized contract amount of $140, so it'd be for $70,000. And he would start Monday, May 2nd. Housing expense up to $1,500. I think that's probably gonna be pretty close to what, depending on what kind of rent he could find, to be reimbursed by the city for the 6 months, and then 1 30-day extension available if we decide to negotiate into a full-time contract. I think that'll give him the opportunity to see if he is worth 160.
And if he's willing, if he wants it, and whether we want him, but I think it gives us a chance to.
Here we go.
Same thing, same reason.
I'm gonna second it. So, any discussion?
Here we go again. This is just a different version of that crap across the street. The citizens filled up this chamber against the city investing in that dump across the street. But again, this council, which I was a part of, that I didn't support it, voted to support that over there. And it's the same thing again with the city manager. This guy has no experience, and we're gonna pay him, but the city's gonna pay him this money for lack of experience. But again, I won't support it.
Anybody else? It's actually call it over.
Wait.
My concern, Mayor, is experience versus salary. I mean, I'm sure he valued his experience. I'm sure he does. But that experience has not been proven to us, to me. He has, according to his resume, approximately 2 years of experience as a city manager. I know some of the other jobs, positions that he's been in, his experience was relative to city manager's work. But to bring him in at that salary, I think he need to prove himself to us at a lower salary.
What do you recommend?
We consider a salary for him or a raise for him based on that, but,
That's what I'm understanding he's doing. He's coming in at 140 to prove himself for 6 months. And then it's up to us and him to negotiate any increase or whether it's permanent.
I was under the impression that he said that he was coming from 160.
No, 140.
No. For the interim position, Ms. Starlock said he would come for $70,000 for 6 months, which comes out to 140. So he would come for the reduced amount for the first 6 months and then prove that he's worth it, is the idea that I got from that email.
Me too.
Well, even if you come for that 170, from what I understood in the document that he sent, he's asking for us to pick up the tab on housing for
Right.
them. If you equate that out, I don't know what, housing will cost, but probably $2,000, $1,500 a month at least that, along with the housing, I'd consider utilities to be attached to that as well. And, if you equate that out over a 6-month period, with a with a $70,000, 6-month salary, it equates out pretty close to the 160 on a yearly basis.
But he still got his expenses out there. All right, anything else? Ms. Oxley, you call the roll.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Witt,
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson,
No,
Mr. Hill.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
while we're still having this conversation, I'd like to make a motion that we terminate the contract immediately with Renee Narlock and Associates.
okay, is there a second? Going once, going twice. All right, that motion dies.
Mr. Mayor,
Uh-huh.
so we need to have a discussion about when we'll hear back from Ms. Narlock about these new phantom candidates that we're gonna have.
I guess so.
I think we need to probably meet on a weekly basis until we have something. I think you're the one that called this meeting. I think we need to meet weekly until we get to the bottom of it, because something's gotta happen. I mean, there's not even any new candidates. I mean, is she doing anything?
No, I don't necessarily think we have to meet weekly, but we can discuss that at the next Monday meeting and see if we need a meeting, and we can call it as we need it. Because there's business to be done, but it puts a lot on staff to come up with a meeting weekly. All right, if not, any other thing to come before us? If not, we'll be adjourned.